Okay. So we understand what's meant by religiosity. Their focus, their primary focus is the hereafter. And they have more focus on the hereafter than they do the life of this world. When a person is in that state of consciousness, they will become a more spiritual being. They will have a heightened sense of spirituality and God consciousness. This is what we're looking for. Okay. Of these four reasons, choose the individual who has religiosity. Choose the individual that their primary focus is on the hereafter more than it is on the life of this world. We're not saying they don't have focus on this life, because they should. It's religious to have focus on this life. But they have more focus on the hereafter than this life. Okay. What does this hadith mean, though? So we have four reasons people are married. The Prophet says marry the one that is religious. What does that mean? What's the proper understanding of this hadith? Everyone's heard this hadith before, right? Maybe not in this context, but we heard it before. Yes.
That can look good in this life and hereafter. Marry somebody for religion.
If you want good for this life and hereafter, marry someone for religious reasons. Naeem?
You talking about hadith, what, the 4 reasons to marry?
That's what we're talking about.
Well, if you're looking at the deen as the reason to marry, proud conversation, you were saying that people misinterpret. So the basis of your connection should be Islam, but you should also build on that with the other things that y'all connect on.
Okay, Jihad.
I think when you, in your decision making, you prioritize firstly deen, and then not to the exclusion of other aspects, but mainly.
You prioritize mainly deen. Mainly deen. Our sisters say what? And we learn a lot here because then we learn about our selection process and who we looking to marry and who we choose to marry. And it's very important, that process, because that then becomes the foundation of the community, right? Or the lack of foundation in the community because we can't maintain our marriages. What our sisters say? What's the hadith mean? Take a shot. No, we all heard the hadith before, right? Not new information, right? So how do you understand it? How do you apply it in your life? We don't want to expose ourselves. So, okay, look. So this is what the hadith means. Well, or rather, this is what people think the hadith means. The people think the hadith means people are married for 4 reasons, the 4 we mentioned. So forget the other 3 and look for religion. That's how people understand the hadith. Don't worry about wealth. Don't worry about prestige and stature. Don't worry about lineage. Don't worry about beauty. Just be worried about whether the person is religious or not. And marry that person. All right? As our teacher, Sheikh Salim ibn Sa'd al-Tawil, may Allah preserve him, taught us, we teach you all, that is an incorrect understanding of this hadith. The hadith doesn't mean that. What the hadith means is this. If you have 4 people, that each one of them has one of these 4 qualities, and you had to choose between those 4, then choose the one who possesses religion over the other 3. In that scenario. However, if you can find a person who is religious and they're beautiful, then that is better than the person that is only religious. If you can find a person that's religious and beautiful and they hold prestige in society, then that's even better. If you can find a person who is religious and beautiful and has prestige and has wealth, that's even better. Why are you shorting yourself? Right? The Prophet ﷺ is telling us people are married for 4 reasons, meaning that these are the main reasons why people marry. Not all reasons, but in the general sense, people marry for these reasons. And the best scenario is to have all 4. That is the best scenario. And if you cannot have all four, then as many as of the four that you are able to achieve in the person you're marrying. However, the foundation that should be there is religiosity. The foundation that should be there is religion. And then you build on that foundation with the other qualities. That's the understanding of the hadith. And that's the encouragement in the hadith. And this is the meaning of fadfar bidhat deen. So select the individual who has deen. Select the individual who has religiosity as a foundation. Not meaning the only quality they possess. As a foundation. And we translate fadfar as select. But the meaning, though, is to become victorious, to become triumphant. So if you want to be successful, then you choose the individual who has a foundation of religion. But a foundation is just that. It's just a foundation. This building has a foundation, right? So if the building only had a foundation, would we be sitting on this floor right now? No, because it would only have a foundation. Right? You got pillars and different floors, and you got lights and different trinkets and carpet, and you want all of that in your marriage. You don't want just a foundation. Because there has to be compatibility. There has to be compatibility in marriage. We're meant to be looking for compatibility. There are many people that are religious and they don't get along. There are people that are religious and they don't like each other. That can be okay. You identify the people, if you're looking for marriage, you identify the people that they're religious and you like them. They're religious and you get along with them. They're religious and you can build a life with them. Does that make sense? You're looking for that. If it's religion alone by itself, that doesn't guarantee the latter. Okay, the former doesn't guarantee the latter. You have to identify that. Okay, so we're going to go back again and look at hasab briefly because it's something that we forgot to mention. And that is this. Also from hasab and prestige, we understand from this lifestyle and social class. Lifestyle and social class is something that is relative for compatibility. It's not necessary, but it's relative. So for this reason, there is an encouragement that, let's say a man is marrying a woman. If a man is marrying a woman, it is appropriate that he maintains the quality of life that she is used to, or that he raises it. It is inappropriate that he marries a woman and then lowers her quality of life from what she is used to. That is inappropriate in marriage. If we do that, we're asking for complications in marriage. We understand that? If the woman chooses to forego what is appropriate, that is her choice. But then she must understand the realities that will come along with her entering into a situation that is a lower quality of life than what she is used to. So at that point, she doesn't get to choose to come into a lower quality of life and then complain about that lower quality of life. Because when she married this individual, she understood the quality of life that he was able to provide for her. Does that make sense? Okay. So both sides here. So a man doesn't marry a woman permissible to. We're not saying permissibility. We're saying appropriateness. A man doesn't marry a woman who has a higher quality of life than him and then expect her to lower herself down to his quality of life. That's inappropriate. We understand that? Okay. The author states here, after understanding this hadith, and do we have a better understanding of this hadith now, what it means, what we're talking about? Okay. Taribet yaminuk, may your hand be dust covered. This is an Arabic idiom. that is utilized in order to grasp attention to the importance of something that is being stated. It's not literal. The Prophet ﷺ doesn't mean, may your hands be covered with dust. May your right hand have dirt on it. That's not what it means. It's just an Arabic idiom. It's just an expression, right? As we have many expressions in English that are expressions that mean one thing and they don't carry the literal meaning, right? And we do this, we do this all the time, right? We say, "What is up? What's up?" Is that what we mean when we say that? We mean we're asking a person what's above us? No. What do you mean when you say what's up?
How you doing? Variety of things. How you doing?
What's going on? Right? How you doing? Things like that, right? Okay, tedibet yamunuk. May your hand be dust covered. It's just an expression, right? To grasp your attention, to show the importance of what's been stated. Okay? So that's the hadith. The author states here, it is appropriate to select, meaning as a marriage partner, an individual who possesses religiosity and hasab and prestige. That goes back to the meaning of the hadith. It's not just one. And they are loving and they are fruitful. They are loving and they are fruitful. Loving meaning that you're a passionate, compassionate person. You're supposed to look for that in who you're marrying, right? Attentive, those types of qualities. I mean, you got to live with this person for the rest of your life, right? You want somebody who's going to be mean to you, and right, gas face and all of that, right? Okay, and the individual is fruitful, meaning that they want and have the ability to procreate. They want to and have the ability to procreate. So the author is stating that these qualities, concerning them, he says the term yanbaghi, it is appropriate. In fiqh, when the term yanbaghi is utilized, in jurisprudence, when the term appropriate, becoming, yanbaghi is utilized, this means mustahab. It means encouraged, recommended. Which in Islam, the term mustahab, or if you like, masnoon, means what?
Highly recommend it.
Highly recommend it.
Sunnah.
How to recommend it means what? Sunnah
You should do it.
means what?
If you do it, you get rewarded. You don't do it, you're not punished.
Good. Means if you do this, there's reward for you from Allah. However, if you do not do this, you're not deserving of any punishment or displeasure from Allah. The author is stating here that this is appropriate. Appropriate is becoming, meaning it's mustahab. What is he saying is mustahab? Choose a person that is religious, has prestige, they are loving, and they are fruitful. He's saying that's becoming. So we understand what's going on. We'll close with this because it's interesting. And we'll tell you ahead of time, we're going to utilize this as a cliffhanger because we misunderstand certain things. The author then states, if it falls into the heart of a man that he wants to propose to a woman, then it is for him to look at her and to look for the things that will cause him to want to marry her. You understand what we're saying? Y'all got the deer in the headlights look. We on the same page? Okay. When it falls into the heart of a man that he wants to, not that he has already, that he wants to propose to a woman, then it is for him to look at her and look for the things in her that will make him want to marry her. Whatever those things may be. Right? Different strokes for different folks. Okay? Now, we also know the principle in Nisa shiqaiq ar-rijal. Women are the twins of men. Meaning what? What's the principle mean?
Likewise.
Whatever applies to men applies to women, less specific evidence.
Right. Likewise, whatever applies to men in Islam also applies to women in Islam unless there is a specific evidence to say otherwise. So likewise now, when there is a woman that she is interested in marrying a particular man, at that point in time, it becomes permissible for her to look for in that man those things that would encourage her to want to marry him, whatever those things are for her. We follow that? Okay. And we are understanding this in context of the general text that would encourage lowering the gaze when it comes to the opposite gender. Lowering the gaze and everything that is included inside of that. Lowering the gaze doesn't always necessarily mean physically lowering the gaze. It's a way of decorum. Okay? Now, when it comes to the issue of marriage though, that doesn't necessarily apply. Because if you're going to be with this person, if you have to decide if you want to be with them or not, you now have to look for the things in them that you want in a person. You got to look. The look may be a physical look to look for what you want to look for. But we're also looking for other things too. Like what? Like wealth, prestige, stature, lineage, beauty, and religion.
So is the other approach wrong? I mean, that person looks for the wrong, not necessarily what they want, but what they don't want.
No, to look for what you don't want to, that's fine. That's fine.
Did you say companionship?
Huh?
Did you say companionship?
Companionship?
Maybe what?
Good. To look to who their companions are? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we're saying all this to set aside the American dysfunctional, defunct custom. Right? So these are all things we're supposed to be doing when we're looking for marriage. Okay? What do we often do? If we're flying above board, right? If we're flying above board, what we often do is, okay, brother, sister, so looking to get married. Okay, set it up, meet in the masjid for sit down, air quotes, right? So we think sit down is the right way to go, right? That is a dysfunctional American concept. That is American culture misapplied. The same way we as Americans may look at people that may be from other cultures and ethnic backgrounds, and we point out things that ain't from Islam. Why are they doing this like that? For us, that's one of the cultural things that they look at us like, what are y'all doing? Not to mention it doesn't work. Right? If you're going to marry someone, you have to get to know the person. It doesn't mean you sit in the masjid office, you sit in the imam office, you talk for 45 minutes, and you decide whether you want to get married or not after you did that 2 or 3 times, maybe 5. Then we wonder why we got the problems that we have, huh?
That's what we do after matches.
What is the extent? What is the extent? Good. So now we need to look at what is proper. And what does Islam allow? Okay? And if we recall our study from last week, we mentioned that when we are speaking about the topic of marriage, Islam places guidelines into place to have proper marriages and to have a proper courting process. But much of this is an area where culture can become an evidence. Much of this is an area where culture can become an evidence in Islam. Okay? And when we understand that situationally and conditionally, culture can become an evidence in Islam, when we're in those scenarios, when we need culture as an evidence, how can you utilize culture as an evidence when you have no connection to your own culture? You don't know who you are. You don't know where you come from. You don't know your people. None of that. So if you don't have a cultural basis, how then can you act appropriately, Islamically, in these scenarios when culture is in evidence? And we say this for the people of African descent in America in particular, but not necessarily limited to, in your void of identity, in your void of culture, you will then import the culture of others into those slots. It can be American culture, it can be Arab culture, it can be Indo-Pak culture, it can be whatever it may be. And then you wonder why it doesn't work for you. Because that's not your culture.
Is that really our fault, though? Is that really our fault?
Yes. Yes, it's our fault.
How would you determine that then? What is considered to be your culture?
Right.
How would you determine that? We have to get back in touch with what our heritage and culture actually is. And at this point, it is a mixture because we are people of African descent who are in America. So our culture is now mixed. But we have to be in touch with what that culture actually is. We're not. We think that now because we are Muslims, now we disassociate ourselves from our culture. That's an un-Islamic concept. And this is not what the Prophet ﷺ did. Right? And there are a myriad of examples that show that. You don't even have to go deep in the text. You can take base things that you already know. When the Messenger of Allah ﷺ received revelation, did he change the language of his people? So they maintained their language. That's a cultural thing. Did he change the cultural dress of his people? No. So they maintained the culture, they maintained the dress. Did they change the food after revelation came? No. These are all cultural items. You can go down the list. Even people who were married before Islam, companions that later embraced Islam, the Prophet ﷺ didn't even make them marry again. Because if you marry in accordance with your own faith or your own culture, and then you embrace Islam, Islam acknowledges the marriages of other faiths. Islam accepts that. You follow? Huh?
I'm saying it modifies that which is not in accordance.
It modifies that which is not in accordance with. Good. So on an occasion, the Prophet ﷺ, he was with Khalid ibn Walid. May Allah be pleased with him. And there was, I believe it was locust being served. And they would happen to be amongst the different people of a different tribe or whatever have you. If it wasn't locust, it was lizard, but my mind is foggy at the moment. Allahumma musta'an. It was lizard, huh? Lizard. Tayyib. Barakallahu feekum. Good. Did the Prophet ﷺ eat it?
No.
He disliked. Did he stop them?
No.
Because that wasn't from their culture. You follow? When the Eastern Africans settled in Medina, and they would engage in certain cultural norms for them, certain games that they would play, different things that they would do, right? Did the Prophet ﷺ stop them from any of that? No, he didn't. Right? Like he would sit and watch what they would do, and Aisha radiallahu anha would come behind him and place her head on his shoulder from behind him, right? And watch them. These were the people of Africa. They were Africans, and they were doing what they were doing. Prophet ﷺ accepted all of that. These are all things that show that culture has its place in the faith, so long as culture doesn't conflict with the faith. At the point that culture conflicts with revelation, we would choose revelation over culture. You follow? But we can't even get into that space because we don't even identify with our culture, because we think Islam means we have to now turn our back on and negate our culture in entirety.
So, because we are from African descent, you would say that our culture is what was done in Africa, or?
We could agree to that. We could agree to that. Since we are people of African descent.
Some people don't even want to subscribe to that. I mean, unfortunately.
Okay, good. Since we are people of African descent, that would mean that our heritage and our culture would lend itself to that. More than likely, people of West African descent. More than likely. Allah knows best. Right? I haven't taken the Ancestry.com swab test yet for myself. Right? But more than likely. More than likely. So there shouldn't be a disconnect there from that. You follow? Okay. We've spoken enough.